Hello everyone, welcome to Scorched Earth Toys at anymoon.com's review of Bandai's Hi-Metal VF-1 toys. These are the original releases, although they're not that dissimilar to the newer Hi-Metal R releases. These were initially released in June of 2010. We got the Hikaru Custom VF-1J. There was then a VF-1S Fokker in November of 2010, but I'll be reviewing that separately in a direct comparison with the HMR that's coming out in April. Then there is the VF-1J Max that was September 2010 at 5,775 yen. And then in April of 2011, we got the three Do You Remember Love VF-1A Skull Squadron repaints. All of those retailing for 5,775 yen. The normal releases come in a pretty snazzy flip-top magnetic lid box. The Tamashii exclusive releases come in a much more stripped-down version. Inside the box, there's a ton of great stuff, including 6 left hands, 4 right hands, 2 of which have gun handles permanently attached, replacement head lasers, a heat shield, 3 landing gears, 3 display stand adapters, 4 TV-style missiles, and a gun, and 2 replacement wings that actually have hard points. The wings that are attached to the toy initially don't have the hard points to attach the missiles to. And of course you get an instruction manual. That was a whole lot of accessories, and you're probably thinking some of those things ought to be integrated, but I'd remind you that this is a very small toy and it's a pretty good looking one. So we'll start there. There's a little bit of an angle to the nose that some people don't really like. But otherwise, it's very sharp looking, minimum gaps as you look around. Pilot figure. There is no opening canopy here. You could just pop the canopy off and then you'll see there is a pilot figure within. Things are decently detailed, but again, this is a fairly small toy, so no over-the-top details. It's called Hi-Metal, and that is definitely a misnomer. We need to start with that. There is metal in the feet and some metal within the construction, but very, very limited. This is not a toy with a lot of metal, so don't interpret Hi-Metal to mean lots of metal, because that is not true at all. The thought is that after the debacle that was the VF-100 line, Bandai wanted to appeal to people's sentimentality as far as a more perfect transformation toy goes, and that's why they used the name Hi-Metal more as a callback than a promise. So keep that in mind if you don't own these toys and you're thinking about buying them. Now we'll talk about all of the litany of compromises that were made, because again, this was a 5,500 yen toy, which was supposed to be significantly less than the Yamato V2 VF1 toys, which were out at the time. But Yamato had thoroughly saturated the market and made it so you could pretty much get a Yamato toy for almost the same price. So the original Hi-Metal line definitely suffered. It did not do as well as it probably should have had Yamato toys sold for retail. So, beginning compromises. You want to put the gun on in fighter mode. Good news is, unlike, say, the old Takatoku toys, this is a possibility. But what you have to do is remove a piece from within the gun. That then allows you to collapse the gun, and then you can just simply pull things apart, tab in, and then push things back together. Should happen pretty naturally. There you go. So now the gun is on the toy, which is great, but I'd probably want to use landing gears. There are landing gears as accessories, but you have to install them by popping off parts. So go ahead and pop that off there. And we could pop these off here. And then we're going to go ahead and put those landing gear on. It's fairly obvious to see how these landing gear are going to attach. You're just going to plug them into the various holes. Start with the front landing gear if you want. It's got the tow bar that's sticking off the front, so it's pretty obvious to recognize. Just find the holes, apply pressure, and there you go. Then you've got your rear landing gears. You want to have that outward bay door in the front. So here we go. Just put it on like that. Push in on the back and the front, because again, there are 2 holes. And when you are done, it will look like this. Fun fact, after the Fokker release, they stopped painting the bottoms of the landing gears doors. So here you can see they're black. On the Max Custom, they are not painted black. I don't think it really diminishes anything. So now you have landing gears. They are long enough. They look good. You're not dragging on the gun by any means, but obviously they're not articulated, and that is going to bum a lot of people out. On your Yamato V2 VF-1 toys, and now your Arcadia toys, you are able just to pop these little covers off and reveal the intake turbine. You can't do that so much on the Hi-Metal toys, but you can pop off this piece here and replace it with that piece there, and that gives you the same look, and even with the Yamato toys you end up with a spare part. So not much more of a detraction there, although I have seen at least one complaint on my website that their toy came with a glued on intake cover, so perhaps some quality control issues there, but none on any of the samples that I've purchased. So you've done this, now you want to put missiles on the toy. Well, that's a little weird. You can go ahead and pull off the wings, and then you have these wings that came with the toy that have the hard points on. Now, the good news is, this might be starting to seem to you like you have just a total excess of parts here. Those wings can be left on the toy all the time. There's really no reason for you to ever use the flat-bottomed wings unless you really hate the look of hard points, but I don't know anyone that really does, so seemed like an excessive change to me. The missiles are fine. They peg in well enough. They don't really go anywhere. Again, with the Bandai scaling down the paint apps, here you can see the missiles have red dots on the front and red stripes on the back. I think some people thought that was overkill. I don't really care. But here you can see on the Max toy, they did not do either the red on the front or the red stripes. Maybe because it's a blue toy, but probably because just no one really cared. So why spend the extra money? One thing you don't get, and you really should, is a Tamashii display stand. These are available separately, and they're pretty cheap, although you get kind of what you pay for. The toy in fighter mode, again, very stable, very solid, very enjoyable, and it comes with this fighter mode adapter. You could have the gun attached right now, but it does create a little bit more of a hurdle, as there's this piece of plastic in the front of the adapter. You need to kind of snake it through. So if this were on right now, I'd have to kind of get it up and under. So for ease of filming, I'm just going to go ahead and pop it on. There is a tooth in the front and two teeth in the back. The tooth in the front goes right behind the shoulders. The teeth in the back go right to where shoulder parts would attach to the forearms, like so. Once on there, it is nice and snug. You can then just put it on your Tamashii display stand. And then you don't have to mess with the landing gears. So it seems to me like a slam dunk accessory that really should have been included, because it makes fighter mode a whole lot more friendly to handle. You're not chasing down parts quite as frequently. Anyways, that's it for fighter mode. Let's keep going on to Gwalk. Now, I'm not going to show transformation to Gwalk mode, but I do have a separate transformation video I encourage you to check out. It is very simple, actually has a couple little innovations to help make it a little bit more fluid than previous VF-1 toys. You can get to Gwalk mode without any parts formation. You don't need to go swap anything out until you get to the gun. If you had the gun attached in fighter mode, now is when you're going to want to go get your handle and put it back in the gun to get your full extended gun treatment. The hands are an obvious weakness. They're little and they're rubbery and they fit and they are perfect transformation, but they are, again, pretty ugly and small. So what you'll probably want to do at this point is go to your parts box and get replacement hands. And all you have to do, grab a hand and yank it off. You'll see there's a little ball left behind. You can then put on one of the supplied hands. Just pop it right on. This is one of the hands that is ready to hold the gun. So instead of using this part, I can just put the gun on right there, and then you don't have to worry about the gun flopping out of the hand ever. So there you go. On the other side, there are a couple different options, a bigger fist or an open hand. We'll go with the open hand here. And there you go. So now I have Gwalk mode with hands that don't look too small. Here again is the before picture. So those optional parts, easy to put on and do benefit the toy quite a bit. One thing also to show you is if you've transformed the toy and your wings are hitting your shoulders, the wings have a little pivot in the back. or I'm sorry, the shoulders have a pivot in the back. So you can bring them up or bring them down. And in their low position, they should not hit your wings and give you the range of movement you need to get whatever Gwalk pose it is that you want. I mentioned before that this toy doesn't have a lot of metal in it. It's pretty much just the feet, but you also have this big metal swing bar that you can see underneath the Gwalk mode, and that big metal swing bar is going to be where you attach your display stand adapter. While I've got the foot pointed at you, you can see there that there's some nice detailed metal work inside. That's all very nice. We can take this display stand adapter, you want to just plug it right in towards the front. It'll also fit towards the back, but towards the front would be your most stable option. So there it is clicked on. Get your sold separately display stand and plug it in. And there you have it, Gwalk mode on a display stand. And finally we get to Battroid mode. And again, check out my separate transformation guide, a little Cliff Notes version. You do have to change out this heat shield 100% for sure. There is a little tooth at the top and a little slot in that heat shield. And that kind of brings things together nice and tight there. If you have your intakes in the turbine version, you're going to have to put on these covers again. That's not dissimilar to a more premium toy. And I've obviously got the optional hands on here. So those are things that you might be meddling with as you transform. When you get here, we can talk about articulation. You have a great range of motion. The head is not a ball joint, it's just a swivel back and forth. Individual lasers, up and down motion. Then on to the shoulders here, you could spin it all the way around. The shoulder cover itself can pivot. You do have that joint right below the shoulder, and then you have the twist point kind of in the bicep. You have an elbow that double joints. So you can get that nice tight range of motion there. Obviously the hands were on a ball, so you can spin them around. No articulated hands to speak of, but in this scale, that's not a bad thing. Okay, so also you can see there's a little tiny bit of metal in there for you people wondering about metal content. So swing bar feet and little tiny bits in the joints. So moving down, there is no waist articulation to speak of. There is good hip range of motion, so you have this range of motion here. I'm going to do this to get a little better visibility here. You can then extend outward. There's a little sleeve inside the legs to let you get even further range of motion. So you can get pretty extreme with your hips. So that's a neat little gimmick that they incorporated there. You also, obviously, you have forward and back motion at the hip. That will be limited by the wings behind. So there you have your Gwalk joint that you could still use. And going down you have a knee. The knee goes that far back and this far forward and has a spin right in there as well. All pretty standard at this point. The foot's kind of neat in that the front of the foot has the ability to pivot. So if you were in some extreme angle, you can have that foot look like it's coming straight down. So that's pretty neat, although that is also a common complaint that that foot gets a little loose. Not really a problem on my Max toy, but I have heard that complaint before. So there you go. Articulation, really, really solid on these Hi-Metal Battroid toys. Okay, so if you're having a problem with your backpack falling down on you, try pushing it downward a little bit. That should help lock it into place, which is more important if you got super parts involved. You do have a display stand adapter that comes with the toy. You're going to want to put the extension on the display stand. This piece just pegs right on like I showed you. You could then just slide it in and then close up your wings, and you've got the toy on that display stand, which again, it's a shame that does not come with the toy. At 1/100 scale, the Bandai Hi-Metal toys were supposed to be competing against the likes of the Toynami 1/100 scale toys, and I think that's okay that that arm fell off. The Coyote Reveltech transformable toys would have been another competitor, the old cheapy brand Prestos. And in that regard, the Hi-Metal trounced the competition, as you probably would expect it to, since it cost maybe twice what those other toys often cost. Here's the Toynami. And in sculpt, articulation, design, in every way, the Bandai Hi-Metal is superior to any of those options. So let's just get that out there. I would say it was well worth the premium you had to pay. You might be wondering how it stacks up against Hi-Metal R toys. The Hi-Metal R toys do have another metal joint, but as far as the VF-1Js are concerned, they also have a nose cone that's removable, and that's to allow for grenade box protection armor accessory. But as far as the VF-1J is concerned, they are largely the same beyond that. So we could see one is a little gray, one is white. That's the biggest difference, really, of them all. So if you can find a cheap white VF-1J, that might be the way to go there. I would imagine all of them will eventually get released as Hi-Metal R toys, so you certainly shouldn't go paying a premium to get them, although the Hi-Metal R toys so far have proven a little difficult to get. Here is the Bandai Hi-Metal versus the old Takatoku. The Takatoku does benefit from having more metal up around the chest area. But that's really it. It's also sentimentality purposes. It's always a favorite. But otherwise, obviously, the Bandai Hi-Metal trounces the classic toys. So it was so superior to all of its immediate competition that the comparisons started happening to, at the time, the Yamato V2 VF1s. And there shouldn't really be a comparison there. The Yamato V2 has integrated everything. It is clearly a more premium collectible, and that does explain why the Bandai Hi-Metals in their original run didn't last very long, because if you only had to pay a minor premium to get a Yamato V2 toy, it was kind of a slam dunk in most people's minds just to go ahead and get the Yamato V2. Now that Yamato's out of business and Arcadia isn't producing VF1s very frequently, and when they do, they are pretty expensive, Bandai has their niche back, hence the Hi-Metal R. I really like these toys, but they are obviously not without their compromises, so keep that in mind when you're shopping. Thanks for viewing. Check out anymoon.com for the full article.